First thing, Deebo Samuel has pledged to bounce back from his awful 2022 season. Few things. So he missed some games last year. He was banged up, obviously. He finished as wide receiver 38 in PPR. He was under 50 receiving yards per game. He was around, I believe, this is off the top of my head now, I think he was around wide receiver 28 in PPR points per game, which is equal to another player we'll be discussing in a second. But yeah, like Deebo Samuel, obviously he was like the dual threat machine the year prior. He had a dip last year. But my big question to you guys and what we can discuss, I guess, is like, how much do you expect Deebo Samuel to bounce back? If you consider last season his floor and the season before that as his ceiling, where in that spectrum do you think Deebo is going to be, assuming he's healthy for 16, 17 games?
You would have to imagine it's somewhere between that. I would say, if Deebo Samuel's healthy for all 17 games this year, I'm kind of siding a little more towards his, I guess we want to call it his breakout, as opposed to his his floor last year. The only thing, I mean, the question is for every single 49ers fantasy football is, I mean, there's only one ball to go around.
Mm-hmm.
Christian McCaffrey obviously soaks up a million targets a game. George Kittle, like, how can you not get George Kittle involved? It kind of feels like Brandon Ayuk's kind of on the better side of Kyle Shanahan now, and especially if we have Trey Lance going this year, you have to imagine a lot of Trey Lance plays are going to be designed for him to run. It's a lot of mouths to feed, but I think Deebo, like I'll say, like like I just said about George Kittle, I think Deebo Samuel is just too good of a player to not be involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 2 receiving touchdowns last year is crazy. I think if you went around and polled the NFL players, Deebo Samuel is probably a top 15 receiver in the NFL, and to get 2 receiving touchdowns, that's crazy. You have to imagine at least that number's up next year.
Yeah, I'd agree with Luke. I don't know if we're ever going to see a top 10 season from him again, just due to the so many mouths to feed. But you'd have to imagine he does better than 40. He just needs to be used more. He needs to be used overall more. I think he only had, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games last year where he had more than 8 catches, and barely. I think he had 1, 2 games with over 4 carries. Like, he's a playmaker, and you're not putting him in a position to make plays. So, assuming they start doing that a little better, he's got to be better than 40.
Yeah, I don't have his game log up exactly. I just have his total season stats. But I mean, I think the biggest thing that hurt him last year, and it's going to be the same thing this year, assuming everybody stays healthy, is that Christian McCaffrey takes a lot of Deebo Samuel's plays away from him, because I think Deebo's a great player. Christian McCaffrey's a better player.
Yep.
Plain and simple. He's for sure a better runner. I mean, that's not even a slight to Deebo. Like, the running back's a better runner, and he's a great receiver. So like, the biggest stat that went down, obviously, I would say, is he went from 8 rushing touchdowns to 3 rushing touchdowns last year.
Sure.
I don't expect him to go back up to 8. Like, I think he's probably a 3-4 touchdown guy, especially the 49ers' whole thing is that they're the best team in the NFL, but they get hurt at the worst time. Like, so what do? You spread the touches around. You try to keep people fresh throughout the entire year because you're going to be in it at the end. And that's what the 49ers are going to do. Like, there's no reason for Deebo Samuel to be a bell cow anymore. There's no reason for him to get 20 touches a game. There's no reason for him to get 10 catches a game. Like, there just isn't. So for that, like, even though he had a bad year last year, and to him awful, it wasn't a good year. I owned him in a lot of leagues. Like, it wasn't a good year. His value hasn't really taken a hit. Like, in terms of this year, his name value is so high, and I'm not sure why. Like, he just made a lot of big highlights, I guess, on national TV. And I guess you had like the Traylon Burks coming in last year, and everyone's like, he's the next Deebo Samuel. Like, Deebo's now the guy that people are trying to become. And maybe that's why. But like, I don't see him rising that much. Currently, and again, goes back to what I started the show off with. This doesn't mean jack shit right now, unless you're drafting right now, and I can't imagine you are. But he's going as the 16th wide receiver in PPR leagues, which is 35th overall. And that's way too high. In terms of just like 16, let's just say 35 overall. That means he's going ahead of Kenneth Walker, Gibbs. He's going ahead of DeAndre Hopkins, ahead of Aaron Jones.
It's the end of
Like
the third round.
End of the mid third round, or maybe early if you're in a different type of league. Like it just, he's getting taken too early. I just think his ceiling's not very high, and if he gets hurt, then he's bad.
Yeah, it just and like I mean, like Zach, you're alluding to, Trevor, you said I mentioned it's just a situation where you have a very good player in a bad fantasy situation, which sucks. Yeah. But I mean, what do you do with it? Are you guys? I know things are going to change for redraft leagues throughout the summer. Right now, are you guys looking? Do you want Deebo Samuel on your team?
I traded him away in Dynasty.
Okay.
So I mean, that's where my head's at.
Okay. I do, but I mean, like with anybody else at the right price, I don't see a reason anybody should be drafting Deebo in the first 3 rounds anywhere. 4th round, I probably wouldn't take him either unless there aren't any other great options. 5th round, I think you have to take him, but I mean, going 3rd is just ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't hate Deebo Samuel. Oh. If you own him in a dynasty league, he's not a must sell. But like if you can find people who treat him as a top tier guy still, like I think get rid of him. It just doesn't make sense. He's now on his big boy contract, so to speak. Like he made his money. He's now trying to somehow earn big money for the next contract. He's 27, but he's taken a lot of hits. Like there's the whole thing about him needing to make running back money last offseason, I don't think is completely false. Like I think he knows like he needs to stop taking these massive hits if he's going to get that next contract. And I think that's a big reason why they went and got Christian McCaffrey, because they need more of those types of players. And Deebo can't do it all. So like I think he's going to be inconsistent. I think he's going to finish the year pretty well. But like these are the wide receivers going directly after him in PPR leagues right now. You got Amari Cooper, DeAndre Hopkins, Keenan Allen, Calvin Ridley, Terry McLaurin, Jerry Jeudy, Christian Watson, DJ Moore, Drake London, Christian Kirk, Mike Williams. I don't think he's dramatically better than any of those guys. And I think I'd take a lot of those guys ahead of him.
I was going to say, out of the 10 you just listed there, maybe 6 or 7 I'd rather have than Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, I think it's for sure close.
Yeah.
And I mean, you look at McLaurin, he's had bad quarterbacks for 4 years, and he's never finished lower than PPR wide receiver 29. Not saying that, Deebo can't be 29, but it's definitely not a given.
And just to speak to that, like I said, Deebo's going 35th, McLaurin's going 47th.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can add
a
Jahmyr Gibbs in between and get a wide receiver you think is equal or better.
I think if you poll anyone with football knowledge, they'd rather have McLaurin at 47 than Deebo at 35.
I think so. People are still just dreaming of that, he gets that receiving touchdown and rushing touchdown game.
Right.
And I just don't think it's very likely anymore. And I don't understand. There's 2 schools of thoughts with the 49ers players right now, and they're conflicting, and it doesn't make sense. People love a Deebo Samuel bounce back year. And then the same people are thinking this is the Brandon Ayuk breakout year.
Right.
And I think there's a chance neither happen.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, it's just for sure one of them's not going to happen.
Right.
But I think there's a strong chance neither does.